Welcome to Story Maze, a place to lose yourself in wondrous fairy tales and broadcasts from another reality. This is the first episode of an audio drama called They Broadcast from Beneath the Sea, a New Beginning.
Dear listeners, these are dire times, but we managed to set up once again that you can listen to this very radio transmission is proof that the truth and science never can be defeated. Many have witnessed that during our last transmission, our vigilant radio station was raided by a secret government agency, whilst many of our crew have been arrested and never been heard of again. A brave number of journalists and broadcast entrepreneurs have managed to get away and reassemble. Due to obstinate allies, we, Radio ReScience, have set up a secret radio station in a hidden science lab. From here, we will bring you the most recent stories regarding that, what comes from beneath the sea and from outer space. Without further ado, we will give you the news of the day and insight into vile and horrific developments that are hidden away from the public eyes. Jonesport, Maine, is a quiet place with honest and good-hearted people. If you have heard of this town, it was probably about fish or blueberries. Nobody living there could have imagined the horrible events that would take place in their unsuspecting hometown. The local ranger, Ed Webby, was on his routine patrol at the shoreline. He later reported that the wind from the sea was especially cold and smelling of rotten fish this very evening. As the dutiful man that he is, he had a closer look at the beach. Carefully, he had a look at every boat within sight to make sure everything was fine. Everything was not fine indeed. Cautious ranger Ed Webby is not a scientist, otherwise he would have picked up on the surrounding clues, but he is a nature ranger, and by this he knew his tracks. And there were many tracks close to the waterline. Giant footprints were impressed in the wet sand. They looked like duck feet with claws, and from their number he concluded it must be a swarm of giant sea ducks. This was new to him, but fearlessly he followed the tracks. The cold air made him shiver, and the moon was standing so low on the horizon that it was hard to make it out between the waves and the distant islands. What horrors may lurk on these islands? Ed Webby, the curious ranger, wondered. But that shouldn't be his concern right now. The fisher boat crashed on the beach should be his concern. And it was. Ed Webby, the resourceful ranger, drew his torch from his belt and carefully made his way through the seaweed-covered sand. This is very unusual. We don't get that much seaweed on our beautiful beaches, Ed Webby, the informed ranger, thought. Then his attention was drawn by some noises. The noises sounded like the tearing of flesh and the gulping down of large pieces of meat through reptilian throats. These horrific sounds came through a big hole in the ship's side. It looked like a maw with ragged teeth and must have been torn open by metal-slicing claws. Also, the fisher boat rested in a way that could only hint at one explanation. A Herculean arm must have thrown it from the sea onto the beach. Trained Ranger Ed Webby drew his revolver and pointed it at the hole. He braced himself and thought of all the good people and his family he was protecting by encountering this evil. Then he stepped into the boat. The floor was covered in dead fish and seaweed. The stench was horrible, but not as horrible as the rows and rows of white and razor-sharp shark teeth glittering in the darkness. The teeth belonged to upright creatures, half human, half shark, with giant duck feet. Of course! Now everything makes sense. They are duck-footed half-sharks which sound like reptilians. These must be mutants. If I only knew it earlier, thought Ed Webby, not so good at science ranger. There were 3 horrendous sea monsters with white teeth and great hunger coming at him. Hastily, he fired his trusty revolver at them. It's really good that I trained my firearm skills this whole year. Ed Webby, reliably practicing ranger, told the sharkman, "Now I will protect everyone from you. See, you are already dead." By the power of his conviction, he riddled the sharkmen in front of him with bullets. But then the horrendous shark mutants slashed at him with their metal-slicing claws. Luckily, it was this time that the police entered the scene. They were looking for a missing fisher boat that hadn't returned last night. Until now, they only had looked for it on the ocean, but the light from Ed Webby's bright ranger torch drew them to the beach. Police and steadfast ranger joined forces, and with great firepower they pushed the sharkman mutants out of the boat and back to the sea. Ed Webby, heavily wounded ranger, is now in the hospital, where he got a visit from a secret government agency to convince him to keep quiet about the incident. That's the news so far. As you can see, the secret government agency is very well informed and hiding the truth from all of us. So, if you encounter duck-footed shark people or hear anything about that which is clearly lurking down there, get in contact with us. Before we end, we have a short notice from our allies and sponsors. There is something lingering out there. Something dark and terrible. You can be part of it. Follow the path. Well, that wasn't reassuring at all. I will have to confer with my chief editor Matthew about this. But for so long, this has been the news on Radio ReScience with your anchor Tom Merley. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and most importantly, stay safe in these dire times, because they come from beneath the sea.
They Come From Beneath the Sea is a tabletop RPG written by Matthew Dawkins and published by Onyx Publishing. This piece of fan material was written, recorded and edited by Tom Murr, co-editing by Ben B. The music on this episode was produced by Eric Matthias. Find his work at www.soundimage.org. All the art on that channel is designed by Looney Dragon. You can find her at Twitter with her label @LooneyDragon. Thank you for listening.